You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions, let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that, saying you the best. Stop that, phony, I am not that. Yeah. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should spend a little less time with the women on your
Welcome into the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster back live from studios of Triple Play Sports Radio, back downtown here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Zach, what's going on today, man? Give me something over there. What's going on?
Oh, it's Tuesday. It's a beautiful Tuesday.
It is.
We're getting our fire pit out for the first time this year. We got a bunch of winter sticks left over. We got some cheese sausages. We're gonna have a
sounds fantastic.
We're gonna have a good night.
That sounds fantastic.
Break out the lawn chairs. We did yard work today, so that way the grass is all nice and short. It's gonna be an evening, man. Might have a couple beers. I don't know.
Too crazy on me over there now.
No, it's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to it.
It's always next steps that you take when the warmer weather comes around, and busting out the fire pit is absolutely one of those next steps.
It's right at the top.
It is. That's right, one of the first that you take. Yeah, and the warm weather's around the corner. Hopefully to stay. Tired of these little I wouldn't call it like winter blasts or anything, but it gets a little chilly every now and again.
42 degrees last night.
It's a little chilly.
It's weird.
Come on now. We're a couple weeks into April. Let's go. I'm sick of it. We got a lot to get to here today on the show. Frank Bonner's going to join us at 3:25. We decided with him just kind of preview where we're going. We're going to take a look at some of the position groups for Oklahoma State football coming up this year with the spring game around the corner. The season will be here before you know it. And I fully expect it to be a rock and roll type season for college football in general, with all the strange new ways that they had to go about it last year. Hopefully by the time it rolls around this year, you've got rocking stadiums, you've got normal college football, and hopefully that is, again, the case for Oklahoma State, too. Can't wait for that to get going. So we'll get with him, and we'll discuss. We won't tell you what group yet, but we're going to discuss a certain position group and take a look at them here. That's coming up in just about 20 or so minutes. So yesterday, during our show, it's always fun. It's always fun to get breaking news during the show. We find out that Julian Edelman, first of all, he said he failed the physical. And if you read more about that today, that was actually the New England Patriots telling him, we're basically going to give you a couple extra $1 million here for everything you've done for us, and we're going to help you out and all that. And it was a good thing for him that the Patriots did. But then you later on find out, because we had said immediately, okay, that means he's open. He's going to go somewhere else. What was it, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes later?
Less than 20.
Retirement video. Pops out. Julian Edelman had it ready to go. This was planned. This was out there. Did you happen to see Gronk's quote today?
I have not.
Rob Gronkowski said there is a, quote, 69% chance he comes back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, Gronk has just fully embraced the whole 69 joke with him. It's hilarious. So that's what he said about it. And it got me thinking. I want to be, really upbeat about it. Yeah, that might actually happen. I just don't know. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if he were to return at some point, but still. And the thing I've seen, of course, immediately, and I know you have too, Zach, is everyone just, like everybody does when players retire, go straight to the Hall of Fame talk. Mm-hmm. Is he Hall of Fame? Is he Hall of Fame? Is he Hall of Fame? We had hit on it a little bit yesterday, but it had blown up everywhere. I didn't even get to see, as much of a thank you, Julian. Thanks for your service to the league and what you did, the plays you made, the Super Bowls you were involved in. No, the first thing was, he's not Hall of Fame. He's not Hall of Fame. I saw it everywhere. It drove me crazy. But the difference in what he is and what every other receiver has been, you can go down the list and say this guy was a good receiver. He did a lot of great things for his team. But Julian Edelman was a guy that every single team wants one of. And you don't find him built like that anymore. Because he was toughness in every sense of the word. Every single team needs a guy who wants to do that dirty work, because what he did. Gets blasted in the middle of the field, holds on to the football, gets back up and does it again on the very next play. And I saw this really insane argument from a lot of reporters and a lot of sports guys out there, and some of them I really respected. And they go out there and they immediately ran to the touchdown numbers and said, let's compare his touchdown numbers to this guy here, this guy here, this guy here, and that was all they were doing. And I thought to myself, I'm sorry, but I didn't realize it was all about touchdowns that got you in the Hall of Fame. It's something that a lot of people really love to do, is marginalize statistics and say, well, this right here shows that he shouldn't be in, or this right here shows that he should be in. And we all have a different opinion on the statistics side of it. And while that's all great, and I agree that has a lot to do with it, statistics matter. The context of those statistics really matter, even more so than the actual numbers themselves. And that's what you get with Julian Edelman. It undoubtedly makes some of the biggest plays and the biggest moments much more than any receiver ever. And that's saying a lot right there. You get guys into the Super Bowl, and a lot of times, right, especially it seems of late, you see guys that don't show up. In the Super Bowl recently, on the receiving end for Tampa Bay, Antonio Brown did the heavy lifting. You know, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, who were the top two receivers on that team, didn't really do anything in that entire game. They didn't show up. That was never the case for a guy like Julian Edelman. He always showed up and, in fact, did so even more so in Super Bowls. His numbers alone in the postseason are enough, I would think, to at least start the conversation to get you talked about into the Hall of Fame. These are the numbers in case anyone needs to one more time. Okay, 19 games, which, first of all, played 19 postseason games in 10 seasons. Nice. 118 catches, 1,422 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 Super Bowl rings, and 1 Super Bowl MVP. Does all of that alone right there, Zach, make you want to go at least consideration for the Hall of Fame?
I think you consider it. And you know, and that goes back to what we talked about yesterday with Levi. You know, probably within 10 years, somewhere between 6 to 10 years, maybe 12 to 15 at the high end. I think by the time you get there, you're talking about, well, maybe he should be included on the ballot, because you look at what he did in the postseason, and it wasn't like he just stood on the sidelines. You know, we're not talking about like a fourth string receiver. We're talking about guys that went out there that made plays to help win Super Bowls. And not only that, but he wasn't brought on late. He produced during the regular season. I mean, he's had a really, really good career. Now, are there guys, I think what needs to be brought up, and not just with us, but with anybody, I think Hall of Fame talks are absolutely viable. But I think you get people out there that are talking about, well, I don't know if he should be a Hall of Famer. I don't know if he did enough, because you got this guy and you got this guy. And well, okay, yes, that's fair. There are quite a few guys that are more eligible for the Hall of Fame, that did more than Julian Edelman, that need to be in the Hall of Fame before Julian Edelman. But that doesn't mean that Julian Edelman is not a Hall of Fame receiver. It just means that there are guys ahead of him that deserve to be in more. And that's fine, because the conversation is somewhere between 10 and 15 years. Okay, great. But he's still a Hall of Fame receiver.
And see, I've seen people adamantly come out. Now, again, that was the first thing they said. Not Hall of Fame, not Hall of Fame. And they do. They go back to other names that haven't made it. And look, that's fine. I get it. Reggie Wayne, in my opinion, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Calvin Johnson, absolutely. Torrey Holt, Hines Ward. You go down the list of guys that they're being compared to. Yes. And I'm not saying, when I say he's a Hall of Famer, I'm not saying tomorrow. I understand. It's just like you mentioned. This is down the line, absolutely, and it will be quite a while before he ever gets onto the ballot, most likely, and even longer after that before he even gets accepted in, if that happens. The problem I have with the Hall of Fame is they don't like receivers. That's what it comes off as. They don't like putting receivers in the Hall of Fame for whatever reason, and I think it's asinine. You've got some guys that I talked about, including Reggie Wayne, right, including Torrey Holt, guys that should be in that aren't at the moment. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that we may even be, you know, if it's 10, 15 years down the line, talking about the same thing with Julian Edelman. We could be sitting there talking, you know, 10, 15 years later, like, remember when he retired and he's still not in the Hall of Fame, right? And at that point, still who would have done as much as he did in the clutch? Because even those guys I just named, fantastic receivers. And people can argue about skill set and who was actually the better receiver and everything, but not one of those guys that I said did what he did in the postseason. And that matters right there. They didn't even make it most of the time. He was on a great team, but he wasn't like he was just brought there and dragged all the way to the Super Bowl in the postseasons multiple times. He was a big reason why they got to that point. And then when the lights shined the brightest, he performed the best That rarely happens, and consistently on top of that, even more rare that happens, and he did it over and over again like no receiver ever has.
Isn't that the LeBron-Michael conversation?
Sure.
Championships?
Yeah.
A dude went out there.
That's the first thing.
He's not like Antonio Brown with Tampa this year, and he just, well, he did okay. Like, he was all right. But he went out and, like, if you go through the stats, you go through the box score, the Super Bowls those 3 Super Bowls that Julian Edelman won, take away what he did in those games, and where are they at? Like, do they still win those games? Because if you take those away and all of a sudden they're losing, well, there's your argument right there.
Right, and the catches were absolutely incredible. Some of them, they were the biggest in that time. They were the most needed.
What did you say yesterday? Scooped it up centimeters off the ground.
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't know how he did it.
You can go back and watch that catch right there and tell me that's not a top 5 catch of all time.
They end up winning that game?
Yeah, it was absolutely. And what was a big part of it? Right there. Julian Edelman making plays when it mattered the most. And I saw, I was talking about the touchdown argument. One of the Chiefs reporters that I really respect and follow on yesterday, he goes on Twitter and immediately throws out and compares him to Tyreek Hill and says Tyreek Hill has more touchdowns now, right, than however many years he's been in the league than Julian Edelman.
Tyreek Hill's the star receiver.
That's
for
what
Kansas
I said.
City.
I was like,
he's
dude,
the guy.
I was like, dude, he is infinitely more skilled than Julian Edelman. Are you kidding me? This is not comparing anything right here. This is unbelievable. I can't believe that. And that right there told me, okay, when those are being the arguments that are thrown out there, people don't have a lot of great arguments for why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. They really don't. I mean, if you can look at everything that he did in the postseason and then still come over here and tell me that all of that right there and the fact that he won 3 rings, and by the way, was named a Super Bowl MVP as a wide receiver, isn't enough to get him into the Hall of Fame, then you don't know what you're talking about, plain and simple. That's what I have said since the beginning of this yesterday and up to this point. And you know what? I thought something else that was great about him that was off the field, okay? He did a lot of great things we know on the field, but how about off the field, too? You remember last year when we had the craziness going on in the summer and tensions were high amongst this country, right? And they still are. But after it all had kind of surpassed a little bit, Deshaun Jackson came out and said a bunch of anti-Semitic things, right? Put it on his Instagram. And if you remember correctly, it was barely covered. It was swept under the media. You really had to go out there to find it. And he said this stuff. And Julian Edelman, one of the few Jewish men in the NFL, instead of responding with it with ridicule and like people like to do and belittle him, he came out with a video and said, "Hey, Deshaun, how about you and I hang out? I show you the Holocaust Museum. I educate you. You show me African-American history. We do the same thing." Like, have you ever heard of an athlete doing that right there? I mean, that dude, it's unbelievable what his mindset was right there. And it wasn't for clout, right? It wasn't for likes and retweets. It was to legitimately try and educate someone. And I think the hopes in that was that when people do stupid things like that, the first move isn't to come out and say that you're a giant idiot. It's hey, maybe I can educate you a little bit. Maybe I can help you learn why what you said was stupid. And I think that's something that goes under the radar. I'm not saying that it has anything to do with him being in the Hall of Fame, but
right.
just overall of what he brought to the sports world. And I mean, you look at the response too that he has personally himself gotten on Twitter. I'm not talking about guys, going on ESPN and then saying that he is or isn't and all this stuff. I'm talking about personal response to him and his video and everything, and everybody understands what he meant. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady immediately coming out and saying how I've never seen Bill Belichick in any way, shape, or form talk about anybody like he did. The way that he described Julian Edelman and what he did for the franchise was unbelievable. In my opinion, the greatest coach in NFL history is Bill Belichick, okay? The greatest to ever do it. Now, that can be debated all day long, but this is some of what he said, okay? By any measure of what constitutes an elite NFL career, wins, championships, production, Julian has it all. Few players can match Julian's achievements, period. But considering his professional trajectory and longevity, the group is even more select. It is historic. This is a tribute to his legendary competitiveness, mental and physical toughness, and will to excel. Day in and day out, Julian was always the same, all out, and then you just continue to gush. Have you ever seen Bill Belichick? I mean, seriously,
No.
not even with Tom Brady.
No.
I mean, come on. This is unbelievable right there. And Tom did the same thing. He went on his Instagram. It's got over 1 million likes of him posting stuff about it. It's unbelievable, the response. And his competitiveness, yes, something that's unmatched. Toughness, unmatched. I don't know if we'll ever see it like that. What he had to overcome. We mentioned the obstacles that he had to overcome. Just unbelievable where he was in college, a 7th-round pick, no combine invite. And then the numbers he put up and the career he had. Come on. I mean, we're not talking about some scrub here. We're talking about a guy with a legendary career who can call himself a 3-time champion and an MVP in the Super Bowl as a receiver. That right there should never go unnoticed.
Well, and he Lou Gehrig'd Wes Welker.
Yeah.
Wally Pipp was the first baseman. There's the baseball player that Lou Gehrig replaced. If I'm Wes Welker, I get that he was injured, but if I'm in that situation and he says that to me, I'm not going to be like, oh, he can have the return position. I'm going in the locker room and I'm suiting up and I'm coming out.
Yeah.
Sorry, ain't happening.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I think it's. It's one thing to come on and debate whether he's a Hall of Fame or whatever, but to see the response, and that's where we are with sports. It's definitely evolved into the second anybody retires, and I think it's somewhat always been like this, but it's so much more now. It's so much more elevated. The second anyone retires, and part of it's because of social media, you hop on it, it's immediately, is he Hall of Fame or is he not Hall of Fame? But if you look at what he did in the postseason alone, I mean, I think it's tough to argue, and I really expect someday, not sure if it's going to happen in 10, 15 years, he will have a chance to be in the Hall of Fame. So I thank Julian Edelman for making me a long lifetime fan of his unique style, no doubt. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, Frank Bonner's going to join us, and we'll take a look at one position group for Oklahoma State football coming up this year and see what he has to say about this specific group. That's coming up next. This is the afternoon sports drive.
Oh, screaming out at the top of my lungs, tell the world that I found the one. Whoa, my baby's hotter than the golden sun. You make my heart beat like a bass drum. Listen to me now. Oh, I've been touched by an angel. And oh, you're what heaven is made of.
Welcome back into the afternoon sports drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Tuesday edition with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. That can only mean one thing. It means that Frank Bonner is joining us on the hotline. Frank, what is happening today?
Doing well on my way to Stillwater. Cleaned out my car a little bit today, so today's been a pretty good day.
It's been productive.
We're talking practice, man.
Yeah, you're on the way to Stillwater for practice.
Yeah.
Not the game. Not the game you die for.
That was spot on. He got it. He nailed it. Yeah, man. And I tell you what, I was saying to open the show, I'm just expecting college football this year to be back and better than ever and as explosive of an entertaining style of play as we've ever seen. And because you get that environment back, hopefully, where everybody is getting a chance to pack it out and cheer on your team. I'm telling you right now, those are the things about college football that I miss so much.
Well, think about how electric that first college game day is going to be. Wherever college game day goes, how electric that place is going to be.
I will say this, though. I'm going to be extremely happy that college game day is going to look like college game day because I didn't know if it was worth the money to send them to an empty arena like they did last season. Mm-hmm. You guys could have done that in the studio.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that they shipped those guys. You're looking at an empty stadium or you're sitting in an empty arena. They traveled, the 200 some odd people, and I think that's why they did it. Every game they talked about the production crew and the roadies and all that stuff. So I think that's why they did it, to continue to pay those guys, because they still made the show still probably made some money, ad dollars. But this year, I mean, it's going to be huge. This year could be bigger than any other year just based on people showing up.
Yeah, because people miss it so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's take a look here at the running backs. Let's highlight them first, because before we get too deep into who specifically we're talking about here, I would have to say that this is. I want to see what you think about this, Frank. But if Chuba doesn't deal with injuries last year, and then of course some lack of production as well, do we even get a chance to see Dominic or Dez last year?
No, I don't think so. Because you had your two gauntlets at running back in Hubbard and then L.G. Brown, and so no, you don't see them, and it's the same situation. Like when Tylan Wallace went out, you got to see some receivers step up, and so it was a curse for them last year to see Hubbard go down, or not go down, but like be out as much as he was. But now you can look at it as a blessing to know what running backs you have in Jackson and Richardson.
I feel like we probably would have seen Dez though. Now it wouldn't have been like we saw him this year, but I feel like we would have seen Dez in like a Dominic Richardson role this year. I think we would have seen probably less than 100 way less than 100 carries, maybe 150, 200 yards. Because that's there were situations when Chuba was really at it. You had Chuba, you had LD, or you go back the year before, and you get Justice, you get JD, was it JD King, and then also Chuba, and then every so often you'd see LD come in, which I think is a huge testament to Oklahoma State, and LD and what he's been able to do. You go back 2 or 3 years. And people they dreaded seeing LD come out on the field. It's like, oh, really? I'm going to see LD because he wasn't doing anything. And now all of a sudden, he's the bell cow. Like, he is the guy. I expect LD to have a monster year. With the way he was able to progress last year, you don't have to worry about Chuba now. Like, that's his position. I think LD is going to be huge this year.
And you can keep him fresh.
Absolutely, because you got 2 guys, well 3 now with the Utah State transfer. So you technically have 3. I don't know how much you'll see him, but you look at Dez and you look at Dominic. That 3-headed monster sprinkled in with the Utah State transfer. I think the running backs have a chance to be some of the best in the Big 12.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to your point about Dez. I know we would, like you said, we may have seen him anyway, but sometimes, one moment can be a big confidence boost that, changes your trajectory.
Texas Tech
game, he had, 36, 35 carries?
Yeah, it was that Texas Tech game.
Yeah. Without the game, who knows what type of trajectory he would have been on. You know what I mean? Sometimes it takes a game like that to really get you going. And so if he was more in a Dominic Richardson role, we may still not have known that from Dez.
That's fair.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And, speaking of Chuba real quick, one more thing. What do you maybe expect from him at the next level, Frank? I mean, is this more of a third down guy for Chuba coming into the NFL, or maybe a team gives him a series every now and again, and that's maybe what sets him off and gives him a real chance?
It's always hard with running backs. Because you really don't know how much of what they were able to do well would translate at the next level.
Right.
But I think he'll get a chance, similar to how Carson got on the field with the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Chuba having that type of trajectory of getting some carries here and there, and then I'm not necessarily saying he's going to have a similar career, but I can see that kind of start for him.
I think it'll depend. For Chuba, I think it depends on where he goes. Like there's a CBS mock draft that has Chuba going in the 7th round, and then there's a writer 2 or 3 days ago for NFL.com came out with one that has Chuba going in the 4th. And then I've seen a few of the lower tier drafts show him going somewhere in the mid to late 3rd round, maybe early 4th. So if he goes early, if he goes early 2nd day, then I could see Chuba playing a bigger role. But if someone takes him in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, I don't know how big of an opportunity he gets because they're not going to put a ton of faith into him.
And either way, Frank, I would have to think too that it's extremely important for him to try to make that splash early because as you've seen, especially recently, NFL running backs we're kind of trending to a point in the league where if they're not elite running backs, they're kind of tossed to the side pretty quickly if you don't perform because there's always someone else that can just slide in.
Yeah, that's valid. And I think, and he didn't get to have a lot of this when he was at Oklahoma State, but I think also NFL teams are going to be curious as to can he be used in the passing game.
Absolutely.
And he didn't get a lot of, because that's kind of where, the running back field is kind of going in the NFL, and he didn't get to have a lot of that at OSU, and so I don't really have an opinion on how that's going to look for him in the passing game, but I think that's going to also play a major role in what type of deal he kind of gets.
Yeah, big time. That was one of the things I said with Chuba this year was an unfortunate part of his injuries and not being out there all the time is that's one thing he really wanted to improve on. And the league wanted to see that. Can he be a pass-catching back? Because if you're not, and if you're not a pass-catching back and you're not built like Derrick Henry, there's no room for you at running back in the NFL anymore, plain and simple. But as far as Oklahoma State's running backs this year, Frank, how much of a challenge do you think it might be? Because I know that it's, you look at three guys right now that all have the potential to hold a starting position on a lot of different teams. And a lot of it seems like, man, that's great. We can never have too many weapons. But I would also have to think that it might be somewhat of a challenge to have three guys at that spot that could do a lot of great things. And maybe how do you get them all reps and get them time?
Yeah, and I think you have to establish who your top guy is kind of as early as possible. And I think, that's going to be LD Brown. And the thing about LD is that LD Brown isn't a running back whose best bet is to sustain, 30 carries or whatever. And so if LD Brown's your top guy, whoever the second guy is probably going in there pretty confident that they're going to get a nice number of touches. The issue is, the third guy, how do you work him in? And I think if you're the coaching staff, you got to just kind of go with who's hot and see how that shakes out for you.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question was I think you would probably have to go with the hot hand, right, and see who kind of establishes that early. But it's a real balancing act because you don't want to, at the same time, like alienate a couple guys that have done really well for you all season. Maybe they're just not quite getting it going early in a game. You have someone else step in, and all of a sudden the role seems like it's theirs. So there's a lot of intricate details when it comes to balancing out the weapons you have. Like, it's obviously really bountiful to have that much, but I have to feel like it could be somewhat of a headache at times to make sure you are, like you said, riding that hot hand.
Well, what you hope, especially early on in the non-conference games, is that you get a big enough lead in the second half to where you can kind of let guys get touches. Because you're not necessarily worried about the end result of winning the game because you've already taken care of that. And so if you can get enough games, early in the season to give you that opportunity to just kind of throw guys out there in terms of the running backs, I think that'll help you fill out, okay, who can be our third down guy? Who can be, our guy when we really need to get it going? I mean, I think those blowout wins, if you can get some, will help you decipher through all that.
Talking to Frank Bonner here on the afternoon sports drive. And then, of course, on the flip side, it may end up being a benefit because you can always throw out different styles of running out there. That's kind of the great thing about these backs, right, is that you get LD, who is going to have the chance to run through anybody that comes up and tries to tackle him at the first level. Then you've got a guy like Dez who will do the same thing, but, oh, by the way, he'll run away from you too, which is also a plus. And you look at all three of these guys and also have to think at this point, we talked about the pass catching out of the backfield. If all three of them can do that, it just gets better from there.
Yeah, and I think, if you're opposing defense, you look at, the past history of the season, you say, okay, these two guys have ran the ball the most. Well, you figure out how to stop those guys. They throw that third guy in there, and you're not ready for that. And so I think that's the fun part of it if you're OSU, being able to keep defenses on their toes. And then, the offensive line, assuming they stay healthy, they're going to have a blast this year, you hope.
Yeah.
Which will keep them in the game for pass protection. And so I think having this slew of running backs could literally affect your entire offense.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It really can. And we looked at LD Brown and got to see a lot of him last year. I think nothing was more impressive than what he did in that Kansas State game, playing through an injury and putting out the numbers that he did. But he obviously took a big leap last year from the year previous. Does he do the same to you this season?
I don't know how much of a leap. I mean, he took a pretty big leap, and so I don't know if we're going to see an additional big leap, but I do think we see him at the very least sustain what he did last year, with obviously a bigger sample size, you know, assuming he's going to be the top running back. And so I do think he sustains that production.
And then let's look at Dez, because we talk about him fitting into the mix and maybe where that's going to happen. I would have to think, though, that when you have a running back of his caliber and showing what he can do last year, that's great because it breeds a ton of competition, potentially even in-game competition at times, I would think. But is it possible to you, Frank, that if he does continue to heat it up, maybe we see more of a committee at running back as compared to, you know, Dez being the primary guy, or pardon me, LD being the primary guy on first downs and all that?
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I think that kind of goes back to the conversation that we had about riding the hot hand. If Dez is you can't if Dez is really rolling, you can't have him on the sideline just because you elected LD Brown to be your guy.
Yeah.
If Dez is rolling, you've got to give him the ball, and so maybe we see OSU running it 1,000,001 times, and everybody's getting their touches or whatever. But if Dez is rolling, you give him the ball.
And then maybe does the same thing work for Dominic if he gets that hot? I don't know how much, if you look at guys on the depth chart, he may be there at the technical number 3, I would guess, right now at running back. But we know that he also has a capability of being really good. So what role does he play this season? Could you see him possibly, I'll add to that, as more of a pass-catching back before it's all said and done this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I think they're going to fit him in there. And like you said, pass catching back. LD Brown is also going to be, I'm assuming that, you can throw him the ball. But he is a little younger, and so I do think that from a subconscious obviously you're going to put whatever back is the best back out there on the field. But I do think you're going to initially give the nod to LD and Dez before Richardson. But, obviously you got to play the seed and see how that stuff plays out. So I do think that Richardson is probably locked in that third spot, at least from my opinion. But I do think he's going to get some share of touches.
We're talking to Frank Bonner here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, mentioning running backs on Oklahoma State's football team catching the football. Is that something that maybe we could also expect more of this season when it comes to Spencer Sanders being a quarterback? Because there are many adjustments you want to see him make. But also last year, when we predicted this kind of going into the season, we thought that, okay, if Chuba really is worked on and excelled a lot more in being able to catch the football, we might see him actually have a better chance of getting some dump-offs here and making plays after the catch. Is that something that you think will be ingrained more into OSU's offense, maybe especially so since there's no Tylan Wallace this year?
I hope so, because that adding that wrinkle in there, I think will help the offense flow, especially, at times where they get stagnant or whatever. If you can not necessarily, because basically a quick dump off to a running back is kind of that's another way to get another run play in without being predictable. And so if you can get some of those in when the offense gets stagnant, I think that helps Sanders get in the rhythm and that helps the offense get in the rhythm. But, man, I've been saying this since I've gotten here. I would love to see more play action.
Yes.
I think OSU could really benefit from play action, and I don't know if we'll ever see it, but I think they need to throw that in there.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that was actually one of the next things I was gonna ask you, because we know that, and we see it at the next level all the time. It's kind of taken over the NFL. Well, you see it some in college, and especially with the most explosive offenses. But if you have a running game like Oklahoma State possibly could, and you get a defense that 100% has to respect the run at all times, I would have to think that play action gets so much more open for you downfield or in the middle of the field. And if you get Spencer Sanders to kind of adjust and take those next steps, that's a lot of potentially high completion percentages waiting for him out there in the middle of the field.
Yeah, definitely. Now, granted, first and foremost, in order for the play action to work, you've got to have the offensive line,
sure,
do their part. And, I think they will if they stay healthy. And so you got to make sure you get that under control. But if the offensive line is good enough, then I say, yeah, you got to do the play action. Get your receivers in open field. I mean, Presley's going to be big for you for OSU this year. And so I say take some chances down the field.
And then we're mentioning Spencer Sanders, but maybe how important do you think it will be for him to have that reliable running game again? Because you look at it last year with Chuba, and he's always going to be reliable. Then there was questions, of course, after the injuries. Was he going to be able to be that guy? LD obviously filled in well, and Dez too. But how important do you think it is for Spencer this year knowing, okay, look, I come into a high-pressure situation, high-pressure game. I know I've got a run game that's going to set me up. And if he's getting third and short opportunities, second and short opportunities, you have to think that puts him on the right track to excel as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And I think it takes, Gunny's talked about it a lot, about him being such a competitor and, wanting to make all the right plays. If you've got a running game that can, support you, I think just mentally that takes some pressure off of him. And then, like you said, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 isn't best case scenario for Sanders. And sometimes that's when he gets in trouble trying to make plays, do too much with the speed, or turn the ball over or whatever. If you can cut it down to 3rd, 5 or less, I think that's his comfort zone. He can roll out if he needs to, but he can do quick passes to get the 5-4 yards, and so I think that's where he would be most comfortable. And then once Sanders gets going, he's really good.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I mean, especially, if he can rely on that running game a little bit and then, like you said, get going, that's a dangerous offense. All right, last thing I want to throw your way here, Frank, before we let you go is today ESPN dropped off their numbers for college football and some of these teams, and they had Oklahoma State sitting at 8 wins for the upcoming season is their prediction. Would you take the over-under on that, or do you like it right at 8?
I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say 9.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's part of your way too early predictions that we throw out here on the show. So we'll file that one away.
And they have to win a bowl game to get 9. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, as soon as you said that, I was like, I know what he means. Frank, thanks so much, man. Enjoy practice today. Hopefully, you get to see some good stuff there. And we'll talk to you next week and see what the next position group we hit on. Can't wait for football this season.
All right, it's always good talking to y'all. Y'all take care.
All right, that's Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner 2. He does a lot of great things for Oklahoma State football, obviously, and I think he's spot on there when he talks about the running back, Zach, because he does, and I wanted to throw Spencer Sanders into the mix too, because he is like Spencer. I expect him to be able to take next steps. We all do this year. You have to. Like, if he wants to succeed, and if OSU as a team wants to succeed, he has to take next steps. But having that run game, and he like Frank said, to take some of that mental pressure off you. And yes, he is correct as well that on 3rd and long situations, not ideal. Not ideal for a lot of quarterbacks. Right. The best of the best can get it done, but Spencer, no, it's not ideal to have 3rd and long. If you're set up in a 3rd and medium or 3rd and short situations, thanks to your workhorses in the backfield that are getting things done, if the offensive line stays healthy, I think it bodes well for a QB like Spencer Sanders.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, you get at least 3 backs that are going to be really solid. Dez really came on strong late last season. Dominic Richardson showed exactly what a lot of people thought they were going to get with him, that was one of the big disappointments when he decided to commit to TCU. You're letting an in-state back who's really, really good leave the state and go somewhere else in conference, and that didn't work out. Not his fault. It was TCU signing another back. So falls right into your lap. So, I mean, that's huge. Offensive line, more experienced. A lot of the young guys got some really good experience last year. They bring in Danny Godlewski, really solid center. You got Josh Sills back. That's going to be huge if they can stay healthy. Spencer is a really solid quarterback, but he's also a playmaker on his feet. So, I mean, you look at how dangerous the backfield is if that offensive line can stay healthy. I think Oklahoma State has a pretty good chance to shock a lot of people on the ground this year.
Yeah, that's
especially with Tylan Wallace not here.
Right.
You got to try to figure out that receiver position.
There are a lot of people that with that right there are wondering, okay, how will they respond losing such a dynamic playmaker in Tylan Wallace? And, of course, Dylan Stoner cannot go unnoticed. You lose both those guys. Well, how does Oklahoma State respond? And I think you're right. A lot of it can start on the ground, and they have the potential to at least, and with a healthy offensive line, go into any game and compete. That's it. You know, I mean, there's obviously going to be games that you're going to win, and I think there's going to be some dominating performances if everyone's healthy this year for the squad, defense included, all the way around. But starting on the run game, getting more comfortable with that, and knowing, okay, if it's all going to hinge on quarterback play, we know that. If whoever's back there, and if it's most likely going to be Spencer, if he's the guy that's back there and he is committed to adjusting and being able to read defenses better and all those things that we talked about, yeah, you have a potential for a really, really good offense that I think could compete against a lot of different teams this year.
Well, especially if you get Tay Martin, Brennan Presley,
yeah, absolutely,
Braden Johnson, if he can stay healthy, Langston Anderson. You know, if you can, and I think Braylon Presley is just going to be electric. I think
I'm
he's going to
expecting
be super solid.
Big things, yeah.
If you can get an outside receiver, if you can get Braden Johnson or Tay Martin to pan out, you can get those guys to be really solid on the outside. You get Braylon on the inside. That opens up the run game even more. And you know, that first game for Spencer will be game 21. So I mean, he is clearly over that threshold.
Yeah,
should be really solid. If the offensive line can stay healthy and they can figure out a receiver, I think the run game it solves itself. I think the run game is going to be really, really solid.
Yeah, I don't think it's one aspect of the game for Oklahoma State you probably won't have to worry too much about this
Which
year.
is huge if you can figure out a receiver.
Big time, with how talented and how deep that running back room is. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, the NCAA announcing a big-time lift off one of their bans, and it's a big-time positive for college sports. Find out what that is next.
Showed you true colors, I don't like what I see. Story keeps changing, I know what that means. Know what that means, I know what that means. How'd you go from being that somebody I believed into being someone doubting me behind the scenes? Can't forgive or sorry that I ain't never received. I mean, least you could have done was gave me an apology. But you're so prideful, yeah, prideful. Taking what you needed, blame it on me, man, that's so prideful, hey, prideful. Calling me conceited, oh, that's how you see it, well, that's so.
Into the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Tuesday edition rolls on. And great news from the NCAA announced that the recruiting dead period is set to end and expire on June 1st of this year. Thank the Lord, is what I said. It was extended 8 times, Zach. 8 times throughout this year. I remember reporting on that, and I thought after 3 or 4 times, okay, you know, eventually here we'll get a chance to, you know, surely we can figure out how to do this safely. And no, 8 times went by, and it became the norm, unfortunately, there. But I will say this, I think that it is obviously past time, but also crucially important, because you can practice and work on virtually recruiting somebody as much as possible. But that's a tough adjustment right there, because especially if you're used to doing it in person all these years and explaining and getting to show off everything that's so great about your university and your program. Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine being a recruit this past year, right? And having to make my decision based off FaceTimes and virtual tours of a campus.
Well, it'd be so hard for a recruit. Like, is it difficult for a university? Honestly, I would argue that it's not, because everyone's in the same boat. So you have the same advantage as everyone else right now. But for a recruit, you know, it's like a long distance relationship, right? So you're talking to this girl over, you know, online, and she's super great, and you're talking on the phone, and then you meet her in person, and you're like, man, this person's weird, man, I don't know about this. I can't imagine if you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid and you're fixing to make one of the biggest decisions of your life, committing to a university for what should be 4 or 5 years, because you're not just going to hang out. Like, you're going to have to deal with the coaching staff every single day, the strength staff. And that's another thing, is if you may like whatever position coach is recruiting you, but if you show up and all of a sudden your strength coach is the biggest a-hole in the world, and most strength coaches, they're pretty tough, but they're loving. There's real tough love. There's some strength coaches out there that are just a-holes. They're not fun to be around. They're terrible, miserable people, make your life miserable. That could be huge. And if you never get a chance to meet the strength staff, you never get a chance to meet, your third string offensive lineman, if you're a quarterback, like, it's so difficult. So I agreed with a good portion of the in-person recruiting bans, because it's still, we don't know yet. But like the last 3 or 4, we're kind of like, man, this is kind of ridiculous. I know there's going to be a good amount of prospects in Stillwater for the spring game. Obviously not official visits. There's going to be a good amount of them in Stillwater. That's going to be huge. And then we've got pretty decent handful of guys that have already set official visits for that first to second week of June. You can find that on pokesreport.com. Just go to the recruiting section. We've had it up for about 3 or 4 weeks. So that's huge. So yeah, it's great, because June is about the time when you start to see commitments anyway. You see them right around the spring game, and then you see a big boost in June and July. So that's going to be huge. I think you'll see a lot of commitments. I think you'll see, not Oklahoma State, but just college football in general. I think you'll see a lot of kids commit, because it'll be the first time they get to go to universities. Yeah,
it's just not the same. I mean, you can look as much as you want at a video and a coach's face on the other side of the screen, and that's great. But until you are in person, checking everything out for yourself, looking at those little things like you mentioned, whether it be with coaches or the facilities, and then you get to actually evenly compare everything and then make the decision based on what you like the most and what you think is going to be best for you.
Absolutely.
Then it does it to me. It would never be the same. You could never replace it.
And what's crazy now, you get like a certain amount of guys that are committing because of national championships, and that's, you go to college to try to win championships, but 3/4 of the guys that are committing, it's what's the old commercial, less than 2% of all college athletes make it pro, or whatever it is. Well, that's it. Like, that's 3/4 of the guys, more than 3/4 of the guys that are going to commit to a school ever have a chance of playing past college. So a good amount of guys are looking at academic advisors. They're looking at dorm rooms. They're looking at, like I said, they're looking at support staff. They're looking at the academic staff. They're looking at degrees. And if you can't come to campus, if you can't get on campus, and you can't meet these people in person, you can't get a feel for what 75 to 80% of your college experience is going to be like, and all of a sudden you show up in July and you're like, man, this is not for me. Like, I think if you had another year of this, I think you see a lot of transfers. I think this isn't a fit for me. I gotta leave. I can't do this. And all of a sudden you're thinking, well, how come that kid isn't trustworthy? He's not. Well, that kid was sold something that he didn't have a full understanding of.
Yeah. I think it's a big preview of what's to come, because a lot of us had predicted, and based off what we've seen trending too in a COVID world, that by summer, maybe even around that June 1st mark, I would hope and maybe even expect a little bit that we're feeling as close to normal as we have in a long time, and that's part of it. When sports follow that train too, you're on the right track. So great news out of the NCAA there. You don't often hear great news out of the NCAA, so you gotta talk about it when it's there. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, hour number 2 on the way, and we'll get into some buy or sell. We'll also take a look at the Masters over the weekend, a big story out of there that some people may have missed. That's all coming up. This is the afternoon sports drive.
And I don't know how we make it out when we make out on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go. Laying on the ground, wondering why it's so cold. How we make it out when we make out on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather.
It's hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster rocking and rolling here. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Tuesday. And to kick off the second hour, we're going to get into some buy or sell.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You'll pick up the phone and you'll sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Make money, make money.
Buy or sell, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio. With Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. All right, Zach, Tuesday. The leadoff, man. What you got?
I'm going baseball.
Baseball?
I'm just kidding.
With
I
the
didn't send
leadoff?
you any
I
baseball.
was about to say, wait a second.
I didn't send you any baseball.
I thought you were just bouncing out the leadoff thing.
I was.
Like, okay.
I was just trying to throw you off. I'm going back to running backs, though. I'm going back to Oklahoma State. We talked about L.D.
Right.
Brown. We talked about Des Jackson. We talked about Dominic Richardson. Those are three very powerful backs. Three guys that really came on strong last year in the absence of Chuba Hubbard. So buy or sell L.D., who is obviously the number one back. We saw glimpses of greatness last year.
Yeah.
Buy or sell that he rushes for 1,000+ yards and 10+ touchdowns.
It's a damn good season.
Yeah, it is.
That's a good season.
He can do it.
It's a really good season.
He can do it.
And you know what? If he didn't, and a competition probably isn't the right word, but if he didn't have so much skill sitting behind him, I would probably buy that he would have that ability. And I think too, because Oklahoma State's going to focus a lot on the run. You know, their running backs this year are going to get a ton of carries. I think that's absolutely going to be the case. And it may be overwhelming at times, but you know what? If it's working, it's working. And you don't go away from it. And LD, you know, last year, early on, we got to see, okay, you know, he was in his bag a little bit last year. He was showing us different things. He was showing us that he was spry. He was able to get through guys. He was able to score. He was able to find ways in the end zone from the goal line. I mean, he had it all going for him. And I thought it was it became from a backup to Chuba Hubbard to a 1B almost, which, you know, elevates from the backup to me because you could throw him in at any time. He would get you started to see him get series implemented for him, you know, where he would take over the whole series and was able to give you multiple carries throughout, and that was great to see. So the durability, yeah, I mean, it was great to see that again, pumped up a little bit. And then I'm telling you right now, Zach, I'll never forget the Kansas State effort that he gave in that game. There was not a lot going right for Oklahoma State in that ball game overall, and it was a game that they should have won. I know it was, and they did. I mean, like, easily. I know because it was like you had no Tylen, so that was a problem. But still, he did so much in that game, and the effort was unbelievable. That might be the number one thing I loved from LD last year was the effort was never not there. Right? I mean, truly just unbelievable. So I really do think he has that ability. If Dez and Dominic were not waiting in the wings with the skill that they have, I would buy it. Now, can I buy 10+ total touchdowns? To where not just on the ground, but he might catch one every now and again, something like that. Okay,
I'll give you that.
Let me buy that then. Let me buy that. I think we see double digits in the touchdown column combined, maybe catching a couple passes in the end zone if he's available right there, or, you know, obviously rushing them in. 1,000 yards, I'll sell on that.
Yeah, I think if it were just Dom or just Dez, then I think the 1,000 yards is certainly more doable. But the fact that you have that three-headed monster, I think that certainly plays into it. You look at what he did this year: 437 yards, 82 carries. That obviously had a lot to do with Chuba, right? He only had 9 carries against Tulsa, 8 against Kansas, 9 against Iowa State. Now, big workhorse, 15 against Kansas State. He had 12 against Miami. But I would have to think that with another year, I think he could easily get 600 or 700. I think he gets pretty close to that 1,000. I think 600 or 700 certainly doable, and 10+ touchdowns. I think he could get close on the ground. Now, he only had 2 touchdowns this last year, but with him being that number one back, I think he could probably get, 6 or 7 touchdowns on the ground and maybe 2 or 3 through the air. So I'll sell both, but I still think I think you probably see a 600 to 700 yard performance and 8-9 touchdowns combined.
Yeah,
I think you could see, because I think you just see a lot from Dez, and I think you're going to see a lot from Dominic.
Yeah, the opportunities are absolutely going to be there for LD this year. That's what I can't wait for. All right, so my first one, let's take a look here. Tonight we have Oklahoma State baseball taking on Oral Roberts in what should be a great matchup again. Now, we saw this year earlier, Oklahoma State shut them out 5-0.
Yep.
That was a solid game all the way around, and you saw great pitching, you saw offense. I mean, it was the whole 9 yards, and it broke a losing streak over there. So buy or sell tonight. Bryce Osmond on the mound. Buy or sell that he strikes out 10 or more tonight against Oral Roberts. I believe, Zach, last time it was like 19 strikeouts, I think it was total for Oral Roberts. And they could not stop striking out in that game.
Yeah, they struggled, man. They were not doing well. And my computer's going a little slow, but let me pull up this schedule here. I want to see what ORU's done.
They're 14-17 on the year.
Past few weeks.
It's not been great by any means, and they've obviously had their struggles, and they're coming back.
So they put up some pretty decent runs.
There's been run totals that haven't been bad.
They had a 8-9 loss to Western Illinois, a 10-0 win, an 18-5. They took OU 14-12. They lost, but took OU 14-12. And then they took 2 out of 3 against Houston Baptist. But they have yet to play since Oklahoma State. When they were number 9, they have yet to play a ranked team. Oklahoma State is now ranked 10th. I think 10 or plus is very doable, and I think that you could see 15 plus combined with whoever comes in after Osmond. I'll buy it. I think Bryce Osmond 10 plus is really doable. I think the way that Oklahoma State's playing right now. I think we certainly could see 15 plus combined. So I'll buy Bryce Osmond 10 plus, and I'll raise you 15 combined.
15 combined with all Oklahoma State pitching. All right, I can get that. I'm going to buy, man. I think Bryce Osmond's stuff is dirty, and this is an Oral Roberts team that they've had some elevated run totals. But that's again, you can kind of separate Oklahoma State's pitching from a lot of other teams. And right now, this team wants to keep the win streak going. Does it mean that they're going to shut them out? I mean, I think that might be tough to do twice in the same season. Absolutely doable. But I'm going to buy. I think his stuff is hard to hit. He changes locations. He changes speeds very well. And he always keeps batters on their toes, and that results in a ton of strikeouts. I'm buying tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going back to football. It's like yesterday all over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
So ESPN comes out with their FPI, their Football Power Index. It's impressive. They got Oklahoma State 9th, which probably wasn't something I expected to see in April.
Yep, nope, me neither.
They got Oklahoma State 9th. I'm a little confused, though, because they've got Oklahoma State 9th. They give them a 95.9% chance of 6+ wins. They give them just a 3.6% chance to win the conference. They give them a 4.8% chance to make the playoffs, a 1.5% chance to make the national championship, and just a 0.4% chance of winning a national championship. So you got them 9th, but you don't give them any chance to do anything other than win 6+ games. But I'm going 8+ wins because they've got Oklahoma State at an 8 and a 4.2 record, so 8-4. Buy or sell, Oklahoma State hits or exceeds that 8-win mark this upcoming season. And do you want to know would you care for the schedule? Care for me to run through the schedule for you? Because I've got it.
Go ahead.
Missouri State, Tulsa, and Boise State.
Okay, those are your non-conference. Yep, those 3 wins.
Then you start with Kansas State, and then you got Baylor. You go to Texas. You go to Iowa State. Kansas at home. You go to West Virginia. You've got TCU at home. You go to Texas Tech, and then you wrap up with OU.
Ooh. Yeah, and I think that there is potential to win. I was trying to count there when you said that.
If you're curious, I counted everything but Oklahoma and Iowa State.
Yeah.
So that's 10.
Yeah. I'm. It's funny because I saw you through that, and I had to ask Frank the same question. He gave me 9.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to go with him on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like sitting at 9, so I would take over. What did you say? They have him at 8-4 is what ESPN did. Yeah, would I be extremely surprised to see that? No, I mean, not really. Again, I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team this year. Would I expect them to beat the top teams in the conference? Not really. I mean, if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm not sure you can beat Iowa State. I'm not sure you're not going to beat Oklahoma, I don't think.
Of those two, you would have a better chance of beating OU just because they're at home. You play them in Stillwater. But you go to, and I'm not saying that they're going to beat OU, but of Iowa State OU, I would playing OU in Stillwater gives you a better chance than beating Iowa State on the road.
Maybe, yeah.
Or even beating Iowa State in Stillwater. They're really good.
And depending on where they're rolling by then, I mean, we're going to know a lot about Oklahoma State football by then. I think that
I would hope so.
Yeah, we're going to know whether they have a team that's
if they're good or not.
Are they good? Or are we still
November 27th?
We're going to know quite a bit. Yeah, so they have look every single year you go in, you probably look at Oklahoma. I mean, they have. You want to say they have that chance? They really do. But this year, I think it's a long shot. So give me 9 wins. I will also sit there with, and that would be one I would take.
Yeah, I think 10 is very doable because you look at it, like you said, 3 non-conference games. You got Missouri State, Tulsa, Boise State. Tulsa, are they going to be the same? Are they going to be the same Tulsa team as they were last year? But you get them in Stillwater, so that'll be. I like Oklahoma State to start 3-0. Then you get Kansas State at home. You get Baylor at home. I like Oklahoma State to go 5-0 to start the year. And honestly, you go to Texas. I don't think it's going to be the same Texas team as they had last year. It's still Texas. You can still recruit. You still got good players. But I like Oklahoma State at Texas. Now, come back in the second, third week of September, and I'll update that to see if I still like it. But I like Oklahoma State to start 6-0. I'm not confident about Iowa State. Iowa State is damn good. So I don't really care for that, but I like Kansas at home. That's 7. You go to West Virginia. I think that's very doable. You look at the way West Virginia has trended the past couple of years. I like Oklahoma State at West Virginia. You get TCU at home. I like Oklahoma State against TCU. And then you go to Lubbock. I don't care what year it is. I don't care where you play. You can play them on the moon. I like Oklahoma State over Texas Tech. They ain't got Patty Mahomes.
To me, Texas Tech is always a toss-up. I feel like that can be a really high-scoring, whoever has the ball last type game.
But the thing that I really like about this Oklahoma State team, we talk about the offensive weapons. Quarterback, I think, is going to be good this year. I don't think you're going to have to worry. I truly hope Spencer Sanders is able to make that leap. And if you can't, well, I like Shane Illingworth. He's still got some growing room, but I like quarterback this year. I need to see what Spencer can do, but I like quarterback. I really like the offensive line. I think if they stay healthy, they got a lot of experience, they got a lot of talent. I think they can be really good. I like the running backs. Still a question at receiver, but you got the talent. Just who's going to step up and fill that role? The defense, lights out. I get that you lost some guys from last year. You lost Rodarius. That's a big loss. You lose Amon out the middle. That's a big loss. But you return your secondary. You return your defensive line. You lose Cam Murray, but you got a lot coming back on the defensive line. I think the defense is going to be huge for them this year in winning ball games. But if you go through that, that's 10 wins. That's you lose to Iowa State, you lose to OU. That's 10 wins, not including a bowl game. So I think 10 is very doable. And you could count a bowl game. I don't care how you get there, but I think 10 wins is very doable for Oklahoma State this year.
Okay. So we saw today that former Pittsburgh Steelers running back James Conner. Now he talked about it actually yesterday with Big Ben and said, one of the problems they have right now is the run game over there in Pittsburgh. By the way, yeah, that's not great. Now James Conner is gone. He officially signed with the Arizona Cardinals.
Was it a 1-year deal? Is that right?
Yeah, he's going to head over there and play with Chase Edmonds. So buy or sell. We talked about 1,000 yards with LD. Can we get a 1,000-yard season out of James Conner? He has yet to do that in his. This would be his 4th year, I believe.
Yeah, I think if he stays healthy, he might have a chance. But it hurts his chances when you've got such a mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray. I would sell 1,000 for James Conner. 1, I don't think he could stay healthy. But 2, I think Kyler Murray is going to take away a lot of those touches. So I'll sell it. I think he has an okay year. I don't think he's going to go out there and put up 600 yards. I think he could put up 750, 800. But I'll sell 1,000 just because I don't think he's going to stay healthy. And Kyler Murray's that's the big one there, is health and Kyler Murray. So
I will sell it. The only way I would buy it is if Chase Edmonds went out, because then he's the bell cow back. I think this is going to be your definition of a split backfield. Unfortunately for fantasy owners, this is going to be a split backfield. Plus you get, like you said, Kyler Murray, who's going to run plenty as well. And James Conner, like when he took over for Le'Veon Bell, those were big shoes to fill, and he did so unbelievably. Right in 2018, when he had 973 yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, Pittsburgh fans went from being devastated that there was no Le'Veon Bell anymore because of he was literally their offense, like with Antonio Brown, obviously, but he would touch the football, it seemed like, almost every play and make big plays when he had the ball in his hands. Well, then James Conner comes in, and all of a sudden the fears are alleviated, and you're good to go. Then last year, again, dealing with injuries. Since then, kind of been dealing with injuries. He had 6 touchdowns last year, 721 yards. So he is maybe that running back that, last year for Arizona, for instance, you had Kenyon Drake and you had Chase Edmonds. And I honestly think, like, while on paper it looked like it could have been a really good run game, to me, that was a little bit of a jumbled mess over there at running back, because you didn't really know, okay, are we going to ride the hot hand? Who's going to catch the ball out of the backfield? Who's going to be our guy? Can we establish a 1 guy? Can we establish a 1A? And it was just back and forth all the time, because Chase Edmonds the year before, when David Johnson was still there, had shown a lot of potential. And he didn't really get that chance. He's been dealing with injuries. So I think it's Chase Edmonds' backfield to start this season. I would be surprised if James Conner is the starter. But if he stays healthy, sure, he has the ability to be really good. But I'm telling you right now, I think this is one of the more interesting teams coming in this year based off of the acquisitions. Of course, on defense, you get J.J. Watt over there. But what will Kyler Murray do? Will he actually get this team back to the playoffs? Can they be a competitor? Last year we came in and said the offense looked like it had really great potential when they landed DeAndre Hopkins, and he played fantastic for him this year, as we knew that he would. And everything else that falls into place with Cliff Kingsbury. But they have so much competition in that division that it's not easy. But maybe adding James Conner will at least give you a solid goal line back and help out with everything you've got going on with Kyler Murray and Chase Edmonds. When we come back here on the afternoon sports drive, the Masters over the weekend ended on Sunday. We got our winner. But there's a story out of the Masters that I think some people have overlooked. We'll explain what that is coming up next. This is the afternoon sports drive.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, never told them so. They're watching as I fall, somewhere down below. Maybe I'll just...
This is the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. We keep it going on this Tuesday. So the Masters comes away with a victory for Hideki Matsuyama. And on Sunday, if you watch any of the Masters, like, he really tried to give that one away. There were a lot of guys that played really bad on Sunday. I didn't think it was that exciting overall because he wasn't all that challenged really. And then of course we talked about those photos that were awesome that surged afterwards and surfaced of him just kind of chilling with the jacket draped over the seat in the airport and all that stuff. No big deal. He just won the Masters, no problem at all. I was reading a piece that Greg Couch wrote over at Outkick. He's a great writer. And he basically explained that this year, without Tiger Woods involved in the Masters, it played into what he personally thought was an not entertaining Masters overall. That was missing something, and that was Tiger Woods. Now, there have been times, obviously, where he hasn't been there before, but it made me think that I tend to agree in the sense that, he grabbed viewers like no one else does in the sport of golf, and it just kind of shows that sports need that central hero figure, right? And maybe it's even a guy sometimes that not everybody enjoys, but they know who he is, and if you were to ask them deep down, they probably would say, I can respect what he's done. Regardless of how I feel about him, I can respect what he has done out there on his respective, field, court, whatever. You think of Tiger, you think of MJ, obviously in basketball, and you see I thought that it also makes sense that at this point, it seems like we're always looking for when that big hero like MJ or like Tiger or, for instance, like Michael Phelps in swimming is kind of moved on and past their prime. You always look for, okay, can someone fill that gap a little bit? And I think that's something that we have yet to see in the sport of golf, because Tiger Woods, I'm pretty sure we're on the same page on this, after his accident, probably never going to play again.
Yeah, he's lucky to walk.
We're going to be really shocked if that ever happens. And you did see when Jordan Spieth got into golf, when a bunch of the younger guys were starting to make names for themselves, it was almost that takeover you thought was happening, where it wasn't Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods exclusively and their counterparts anymore. It was all these young guys kind of bringing a new style of play. There was more energy a little bit. You saw, and they were really young, right, making a lot of money playing a really, really tough professional sport. But as of now, I don't think there is anybody, because we've seen some of those young guys like Jordan Spieth, for instance, like Ricky Fowler, guys that have fallen off a little bit, haven't had a ton of sustained success. You remember Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau have made big names for themselves in golf recently, and what was their gimmick? Well, they were the big, tough, strong, buff dudes that were out there swinging a golf club, right? That's what you think of when you get that name, but it didn't stick. It's faded. Especially after DeChambeau, when he talks about how the Masters probably wasn't that hard and has had his butt handed to him now twice trying to play on Augusta, and admits that he may never get the hang of it. That's not what you expect to hear out of the best to do it. So a sports hero to me, which is what Tiger Woods is, always needs a successor. Ryan Lochte was trying to be that guy for Michael Phelps, if you remember, and we all know what happened there, right? Maybe it's Patrick Mahomes trying to be that for Tom Brady before it's all said and done, potentially. Things like that. But sports heroes need that successor. And sometimes it's not easy finding one, and it seems like it's something that needed so quickly to keep people involved, especially in a sport like golf. Because, is it great that Hideki Matsuyama won? Yeah, he deserved it, man. If everyone's going to play like that and he plays better, he deserves to win that. But are we going to remember this a few years down the road, and is he still going to be the guy that we're talking about? History says probably not. It's maybe going to be someone else that comes in and takes that spot. But I thought about that this year with no Tiger Woods in the Masters, and we saw there were a record it's been a long time since we've seen viewership numbers this low for the Masters. People didn't really tune in all that much. He was a guy that brought viewers based off his name, based off how he acted socially, based off how he was in the media, based off his personality in general, and then, of course, his playing, right? There was always a chance that every shot he took, there was something magical that potentially could happen, and we see that in other sports. So I think right now, Zach, golf needs that next person up, next one up.
Absolutely, and I think what makes it even worse right now is that Tiger hasn't been that guy for a while. We haven't had prime Tiger for a really, really long time.
Even before he won the Masters again, right?
Absolutely.
He was kind of fading.
That was one of the most, I don't want to say fluky, but that was one of the craziest things. No one expected that. And that's the thing, there were some people, I think, that genuinely expected Tiger Woods to be back to Tiger Woods after he won the Masters a few years back. That's not the case. You look at what's happened since he was in his prime, and there hasn't been a golfer that just has come along and just absolutely wowed everybody, that's in contention to win every single tournament, every single weekend. So that in and of itself, I'm not big into golf, but if you have a guy like Tiger Woods that's week in and week out putting up just ridiculous numbers, you're getting those, several thousand people crowds that show up week in and week out because you got a guy like that. I'll be honest. I watched a little bit of golf on Thursday, and that was it. I didn't watch anything else. And I understand, there's some people that are like, oh, that's what you got to watch. Well, I'm not big into golf anyway, but there's not a guy that's going to draw me.
That's exactly my point.
I'm not going to – I like Ricky, but at this point, I don't know if we're going to get Ricky Fowler, the Ricky Fowler that people expected Ricky Fowler was going to be. You go back 2 or 3 years ago, and Ricky Fowler was like the next coming.
Exactly.
And he hasn't really done anything. Now, Matthew Wolff, I think it could be that guy. You know, he's really, really good. He has that funky swing, but he has the talent to back it up. He's kind of brash. So maybe in 2 or 3 years, Matthew Wolff could be that guy. But I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things. And I think what makes it worse, like before Tiger won the Masters a few years ago, like what's worse, not having Tiger or having Tiger that shows up and shoots a 2-over on the first day and then misses the cut the second day, or like we saw pretty recently, miss the cut on the first day. Like, I feel like that's more disappointing than just not having him at all.
Yeah, you know, it was in golf specifically. You had Jack Nicklaus, and then and you had Arnold Palmer, guys with success in majors, and you think, okay, who's gonna fill those shoes? Well, Tiger Woods did that and then some. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, okay, we're expecting the next one. And when Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler and McIlroy and all these guys kind of came in, I thought at that time, all right, the wave is about to take over. These are going to be the guys from now on that you're going to hear about over and over and over. And again, that hasn't really necessarily been the case because you've had this lack of sustainable success, and it's not easy in golf. I understand it. But as sports fans, we always love to root for a sports hero everywhere we go. And like you mentioned, even if you're not a huge fan of a certain sport, you know the guy. Why? Because he was so good at what he did, and he reached a bunch of people, even if it was unintentionally, right, for some people. But you were able to know who he was. You're just kind of expecting, as a sports fan in general, all right, we got to have that next guy up. And I think golf particular right now is lacking that. We've seen it obviously a little bit in basketball. People, you can go ahead and say like LeBron James was somebody that grabbed attention after Michael Jordan. He kind of filled those shoes, whether you like him or not. He basically did that for the sport. Again, we talked about it. Will Mahomes do it for Brady? Lochte attempted to do it in swimming. You go down the list of a bunch of some of the best athletes, and you see, okay, a lot of times they've had successors that have come in and done a fantastic job. But after that, especially with golf, I'm not sure when that will eventually take over and if we'll ever see someone be as dominant as Tiger Woods was in that particular sport. Remains to be seen, no doubt. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, we're going to tell you what we learned to round out this Tuesday. That's up next.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my password begin with a 1 or a 2? Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Woody-la-di-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on a budget. So woody-la-di-do, yeah. Come on, here we go, yeah. Come on.
Here we go.
So put your best face on, everybody pretend you know this song, everybody.
It's the afternoon sports drive. Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster getting ready to say goodbye on this Tuesday afternoon. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Thanks for sticking around with us. And to round things out, we're going to tell you what we learned here on this Tuesday.
The day is coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter. Let's find out what the guys learned today on the afternoon sports drive.
Well, I learned something today.
I learned, Zach, that 5 years ago today, this day in sports history, Kobe Bryant dropped 60 on the Utah Jazz in his final NBA game.
I watched that game.
Yeah, I did too.
It was a great game.
It was one of those I remember exactly where I was, freshman in college. My buddies next door in the dorm next door, we were watching it over there, and could not believe what we were watching. It was unbelievable. It was one of those nights that really kind of immersed me even deeper into sports. I remember everything about that night because the St. Louis Blues hockey team was playing Chicago, beat the Chicago Blackhawks. We watched that. It was a great night overall. After what Kobe did, it was unbelievable, man. It was one of those that you remember forever in terms of sporting events happening. But what Kobe did, yeah. I mean, obviously that's a storybook ending to put a cherry on top of your career.
Absolutely.
And what Kobe did was unbelievable throughout his entire career. And it's nice to remember, because it's so easy now, with his tragic passing, to only remember that part of it. But what he did, and it seems like it wasn't that long ago, by the way, 5 years ago. Yeah. That's really unbelievable. It does not seem that long ago when he was still out there really just dominating, doing what he does best. And, it's one of those things that I think we have to resonate a lot with a legend like Kobe, is that he was one of the, and it's true, but one of the few athletes that really got to leave on his terms on the right note. That doesn't seem to, sports doesn't always work out that way for a lot of guys. Kobe, though, it was only that, it would be fit, you couldn't have it any other way. Like the way that his career went, it would be fitting that he would end it on something like that. But when I saw that, I was like, wow, 5 years ago, man. It was an incredible performance.
Yeah, and it seems like a lifetime ago.
It does, yeah.
It seems like it was just yesterday, and it seems like a lifetime ago, man. Kobe, top 3 of all time, easily. One of the greatest to ever do it. I found out today that Dez Bryant is still working out like he's going to come back and play. Like,
give me a break.
And I went through his account, and I like Dez Bryant. But you go through his Twitter account, and it's like every day or every other day he's posting a workout video and like in attempts to come back. And I found that kind of funny, because he wasn't really successful at coming back the last time.
He gave it a shot. The Ravens gave him a shot. Now, we knew he wasn't going to have much of an opportunity to do anything. You wouldn't anyways as a wide receiver in that offense, but he especially, and he didn't. And maybe right now he's like, look, I want to post these videos. I get the attention of a team that needs an old receiver, I guess. I don't know, because he is an old receiver by now. And I really do think that with Dez, had he have gotten that chance with the Saints, remember that when he was coming back after the Cowboys?
Without tearing his Achilles. Wasn't it Achilles?
Yeah, got the injury. And that I would have liked to see how that panned out with Drew Brees. I really think it would have been interesting. They probably would have used him a lot more clearly than the Ravens did. He would have gotten a real shot to be one of the top 3 receivers in that offense. Him and Michael Thomas. I think that would have been really, really interesting to see. We never got to see it come true. But look, I've talked about how I feel about Dez. I've always thought he was. Did he have talent? No doubt. I mean, but he was one of those guys that couldn't stop the off-the-field stuff. I would think even to this day, I mean, maybe he's matured a little bit. I don't know. I feel like this is just a part of him at this point. He always annoyed the heck out of me in the league with the and that's kind of where it helped drive my hatred for the Cowboys. The "we them boys" and the "throw up the X" and Dez caught it and all this stuff. Give me a break. That's what I think of when I think of Dez Bryant. Hey, now would I be surprised if he ends up on a team this year? Eventually, no, but it's one of those things where it's like, he's out there for a third down every now and again. He might do what he did with the Ravens. He catches the occasional touchdown in garbage time, and people lose their minds because it's Dez Bryant, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's one of those guys that is just an NFL fan in general. You like to see attempted comebacks, but it's not easy to receive.
It's like Brett Favre.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. And tell me about if this is true to you, too. The only real, and this is still a stretch, but the only real chance players have at making a comeback, really, to me, in the league anymore is probably at quarterback in some sense. Receiver, not easy. Running back, no doubt.
What Dez needs to do is he needs to go north of the border.
Oh.
He would dominate the Canadian Football League.
Just let him go to
Prove me wrong.
Let him go to the Fan Control League and play with Johnny Manziel.
Do you know how electric Dez Bryant would be in an indoor football? Because if you watch these videos, he's dominating. And I'm not trying to be hateful, but he's dominating corners and safeties that played like 2.5 seasons of like D2 football, or played at some group of 5 school that played like 2 seasons in the league. Well, it didn't play, but was in the league for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh my gosh, man, look, Dez Bryant, he is dominating these guys. Like, who's that guy's name? Do you know who that is? No? Okay, then. Like, he's dominating fan control corners.
Fan control, and the video has been edited to they don't show any of his drops.
They only show
the bad plays.
They only show like 4 clips.
Yeah.
And the dude is pouring sweat, so you know he's been there for like 2.5 hours.
Dez, we got 4 really good plays, man. We're gonna clip them together. Nice, that
Clip
works.
them together.
Send that to every team.
Slap it out.
I mean, every team. Let them know. Send it out.
And then if I get told I was around a positive case, I'm gonna quit.
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna play. I'm gonna quit.
I forgot about that. That was the latest installment.
Before the
in
game
his drama.
started, he's like, I was told that I was exposed.
I remember
quit.
that.
I'm not gonna set out and prove that I'm not positive. I'm just gonna quit.
Oh, that was a good one.
Wild.
I forgot about that.
Wild.
Yeah, he wow. The saga of Des Bryant continues.
I would be surprised, and I like him. I'm not trying to talk bad about him because what he did at Oklahoma State was really impressive.
Sure,
but I would be really surprised if he got picked up.
He
barely got picked up last time.
Right. He would also be the guy that would make a big deal of announcing his retirement. And then a year goes by, and he's like,
I'm coming back.
I've been thinking, guys, and I think I have what it takes to do it one more time.
My Wrangler jean money ran out. I got to come back and play for the Jets.
Yeah, let me the Jets. Yeah, I want to go over there. Zach Wilson's balling out over there. I'm gonna
go back up Sam Darnold in California, Carolina rather.
Ugh. No, thank you. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. That's Zach Lancaster. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We'll be back on tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And don't forget that we'll have Tom Dorado with us. He wanted me to make sure that everyone knows that Where Are They Now? He's already revealed his guest. It's going to be Chief coming on.
Oh, my goodness.
And talking Oklahoma State baseball with the upcoming series with TCU, which is bound to be an amazing series.
Super solid.
Yeah, between 2 really good teams. So that's coming up tomorrow. Make sure you stick around for that. It's been the Afternoon Sports Drive. We'll see you at 3 o'clock tomorrow.